You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Hey, Matt, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you, Andy?
Good. Just trying to keep warm in these cold, dark winter months. That's all.
Tell me about it, man. It's the months that are depressing for sure. After the holidays, but before the spring, it's the dull.
Right when the holiday credit card bills start coming in. Is that what you mean?
Worst.
Well, folks, this is the Shoe In Show. It's the Footwear Industries podcast. So pull up a chair to our table. This is a leadership series that we're kicking off the year with, where we're talking to different leaders across the industry from different segments, different product types, different retailers, different brands, and trying to glean from them the outlook for 2021, lessons learned, where we're heading. Hopefully, a lot of optimism as we look into 2021. 2020 as a year was, I mean, you can't even describe it, right? There's no adjectives to really say what a sea change it was, economically, politically, socially. And I think what we're trying to do as an industry is just get our bearings back to what is kind of the new marketplace, where the consumer is going to be, what they want, and try to pivot to that as best we can. So, Matt, yes. Who is the leader that we're going to talk to today that's going to help us sort out all those things, look into the crystal ball, tell us the future so that we can start buying the right stock?
Yeah, great question, Andy. If you were to create like a Frankenstein of a footwear executive and put all the cool aspects, at least the things that check my boxes, it would be Peter Bragdon, who's Executive Vice President, Chief Administrative Officer, and General Counsel at Columbia Sportswear. But allow me to explain before we talk to Peter. So Peter is the father of 3 daughters like myself. Now, Peter's daughters were all born on the same day, a multitude of years apart. I only have 2 that were born on the same day, 2 years apart. So I'm a slacker in that regard. But you put the fatherhood in there. He's got a background in D.C. with a little politics sprinkled in. He's got a little, obviously, with Columbia Sportswear, the outdoor industry covered with one of the coolest and greatest brands in outdoor history. And then to top it all off, from what I understand, he got his start on the shoe floor at Nordstrom as a kid or as a teenager. So you mix all that in and you got Peter Bragdon. So Peter, welcome to Shoe In. We're very excited to have you on, and thank you for your willingness to come on and talk to us today.
I'm glad to do it. I didn't realize I'd be called Frankenstein, but I'm going to wear that as a badge of honor. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's talk. Let's start from those days on the floor at Nordstrom all the way to where you guys are now. You guys are killing in the outdoor space, and we want to spend time talking about kind of what the outdoor outlook is for 21. But before we get into that, walk us through your quick shoe story, and then kind of what's your day-to-day at Columbia Sportswear where you sit there now.
Well, I'll be brief about my experience at Nordstrom. I remember it like it was yesterday because it was one of those painful experiences. And I love Nordstrom, so don't get me wrong. I worked the shoe floor in the first 2 weeks. It was their annual, semi-annual sale, but it was I had to begin the morning after my high school all-night graduation party. I was hallucinating by the end of it without anything in my system. But I've had an affinity for this industry, speaking broadly, for a long time, and I probably have never even told you that about. My brother worked at Nike, set up their first office in Singapore back in the 80s.
Wow!
And frankly, only his boss there left Nike to run for governor of Oregon, and he left with him to direct policy on his campaign, policy development on his campaign. So I've been, had piles of sneakers being sent to me in the mail, legitimately, nothing done for decades. And then, frankly, with dumb luck, I ran into Tim Boyle, was introduced to him in the mid '90s, started doing some legal work for him, and the rest is kind of history. I came in and have been here on and off since late '99, and I don't know, it's like a snowball or lint brush. I've been picking up different responsibilities along the way. So I oversee about probably 10 or 11 functions here, depending on how you count them. And in the last 3.5 years, Tim asked me to also oversee our international distributor markets, about 60 countries around the world, everything from Chile to Russia to Hong Kong to India, the Middle East, things like that. So I have commercial responsibilities as well.
That's amazing. It's a huge portfolio. One of the things that we admire about you and Tim, the entire Columbia Sportswear family, having talked to Tim, he's been on this program before, is your political activism in the trade space. And talk to us about the ad you just ran recently, the Take a Hike ad, and kind of what goes into your thought process. Who comes up with these great phrases and these thoughtful ads that you take out as it relates to kind of your involvement in the political space?
You know, as Tim would tell you, I mean, we probably wish that we actually had some methodology to this. Sometimes I think he and I are just like-minded on some of these things. And what we did is, just to clarify, we ran a full-page ad on the back of the front of the Washington Post a couple of weeks ago with a tagline, "Take a hike," right? And then it congratulates the winners, all winners, on Election Day, and says we look forward to working with the Biden administration on outdoor issues, and kind of recommend to people who lost that they take a hike, because it's a good place to get peace of mind. That one, I will tell you, and our marketing people here would tell you, I'm sure quietly, that they didn't come up with that. That was the product really of Tim and myself texting back and forth on a weekend. Hey, would this be fun? And it's kind of fun, frankly. We get a lot of consumer engagement from it, but we're probably the last company on the planet that is choosing to just run a print ad in one paper on one day. So I think some of the impact comes from it being unexpected.
Hey, Peter. Peter, this is Andy. Yeah, Peter, this is Andy. I just wanted to chime in a little bit and get your insight into, you were saying you manage all the distribution worldwide. How, one of the biggest issues we've seen that keeps popping up, and it's been there for a long time, but just brand protection and intellectual property keeps coming up in China and everywhere else. How big of an issue is that right now that you guys are looking at? How much time is spent on that from your perspective?
We have people, it's a constant thing. And we have the good fortune of having great neighbors here in Oregon who work on these issues. This is one of these areas of where brands really work together, right? You find a container of counterfeits and it's got Nike and Adidas in it, and everybody's picking up the phone. And we have people who are working on this here nonstop. They're working in industry groups, and the nature of the problem is changing because it's becoming easier to make things and easier to sort of sneak them into the U.S. in packages, right? Of one pair or two rather than by container. So it's harder to have customs catching these things. You have to constantly be adapting what you're doing to be fighting it. When I started here, this was one of the first things I focused on. I'm talking back in '99. Meaning it was just part of my job to do it. And the way it's changed in that time is dramatic. Particularly, it's really the online aspect of it, and it's whack-a-mole. And so it's sending thousands of cease and desist letters and trying to get things taken down. But as I said, we've good fortune to have great partners in the industry, and of course, organizations like FDRA play a critical role in that. It's a good problem to have in the sense that we want people to desire our product so badly that they're almost going to commit a crime to have it, but we don't want them to actually go all the way.
Yeah. As you guys look to 2021 and your operations, you guys are one of the most global companies that we know that are out there. And you have such a fervent kind of, I guess, fan base or consumer base, however you want to call it, but people who are driven time and time again to the quality of your product. as you look at 2021 and the global marketplace, are we going to see growth in the coming year? Are you guys concerned a little bit about what's happening worldwide in different markets? You guys see growth in the U.S. Where do you see the landscape heading economically?
2021 is expected to be a better year than 2020, and you couldn't have encountered a worse storm. So we have one of the great things about working with Tim and the Boyle family is we are able to take a long-term view of things. We were able to invest in important projects, particularly digital projects, during the tough times of the last few months, and really trying to position ourselves for a long-term opportunity to get market share and grow the brand. And I think we're fortunate to be in the outdoor industry, and when every government on the planet is telling people that they can't be inside unless they're in their house, they can't go to concerts, they can't go to restaurants. You see people deciding to take up hiking, a lot more walking, considering walking their activity. So that's a great way to get people wanting our types of shoes and, frankly, wearing them out and needing another pair. I'm personally very optimistic about things. We came into this a strong company with a very strong balance sheet. We continue to have a strong balance sheet, and that enables us to be flexible whatever comes our way. There's still just a lot of uncertainty with everything, and being in as many countries as we are in, you can kind of see how the virus affects the marketplace, because it's being handled differently and hitting at different times. It's like a wave that went across the country. Across the globe.
What do you think in terms of? I mean, time and again, when we're talking to leaders on the series or anywhere else, it's a lot about the inventory and managing inventory and how much new product you're going to launch. And, are we hitting a point where we should be a little bit more bullish than we have been? Is it, in this environment, because, interest rates are very low. Is it a good time to invest some and get some capital and start injecting more and building new brands and new types of products? Or is it still a cautious time where we need to be, very cautious of what we're doing and why we're doing it? What do you think about that in terms of just financially and risk taking right now?
I think, frankly, it's a mix of both of those things. As I said, we tend to be a cautious company anyway, from a financial standpoint, and in these kind of downturns, and historically in downturns, we've come out stronger. So it's, you pare back some of the investments, but you want to be in a position to continue to do it. So we will, if I'm looking at 2020, we closed some retail stores, but we're also opening them at the same time. So you think differently about what the locations are and how people are shopping. Do they want to be in an inside mall? Do they want to be, do they want to be in an outdoor mall? Is it an outlet? Is it in a city center? So there's all kinds of different things. We're very focused on digital, and like other companies, we saw, really great growth in an already healthy digital business. And so we've had, pretty expensive projects and investments going on here, and we're continuing to make more of those. So I think it's both, but you have to be mindful of the uncertainty that is out there, and both from the supply shock that everybody dealt with, the difficulty of getting product, and then the demand shock as people couldn't get out to shop. So we're mindful of those things. We're not out of the woods on those things.
Yeah, Peter, let me ask you a couple questions about your brands, and then we'll pivot over to the Biden administration and what your expectations are. But before we get there, you guys have some really great brands outside of just Columbia Sport. The Columbia brand. You've got Mountain Hardwear, you've gotten Sorel and Prana, and so many great brands. Are there some that are faring well, better than others, or has COVID really injected interest in each of the brands in different ways, whether it's camping equipment to fashionable boots on the Sorel side to performance boots and footwear on the Columbia side? How are each of your brands faring during the COVID storm?
It's one of the great things about being in a company that has multiple brands, multiple channels, and is in more than 90 countries. Is, there's always some ups and downs in different places, but you have that diversification. And Columbia is the vast, bulk of our business, and is a strong brand that's been around for a long time. Without commenting on the specific performance of each of them, we're feeling good about all of them. And Sorel really has been a tremendous grower over the last several years. It's really transformed from this technical, functional, men's Canadian cold weather boot company into a more fashion-forward footwear brand, really focused on women. And there's plenty of men's shoes as well. So that's one place that we're particularly excited. But we see opportunity in all of them, and really with Sorel and Columbia being the two footwear ones. We don't have footwear in Prana or in Mountain Hardwear.
Right.
One can imagine a day where that could happen. That's not something that we're thinking about now because we've got so much opportunity, we think, with the other brands. I think at the outset, you guys were talking about sort of these dark days of winter. We pray for the dark days of winter here. We pray for bad weather. I hope your weather is horrible this year, because there is a lot of our business that remains in the cold weather area, snow boots, etc. But we're year-round brands with footwear, and Sorel has really transformed with some great spring product.
Maybe you could. Hey, Peter, maybe you should run an ad that says you welcome the White Walkers. As people start to rewatch Game of Thrones. Well, that would be genius.
I will pass that along to the marketing people, and I'm sure they will take it like many of my ideas.
A special filing cabinet called the.
Yeah, I think they have a special place for my ideas.
Well, let's pivot real quickly as we close this out and talk about the Biden administration, right? So we clearly, we have a divided nation, and then we have people on both sides, and we all come from different political persuasions. But I think that the one thing as an association we've been focused on is, one, are you with us on trade? And this administration, the current one the Trump administration has been a challenge on trade, to say the least. And secondly, can you provide predictability, right? And so there's been tax cuts and other things that have been injected into the system, which we think are helpful. There's stimulus, which is helpful, but there's also been a lot of unpredictability. So from our perspective, the Biden administration is one that might be more predictable from a policy-making perspective. Doesn't mean we expect them to make all the decisions we want them to make as it relates to tariffs and trade liberalization. But from your perspective, Peter, what does a Biden administration mean for the Columbia Sportswear business as a whole?
Well, I think it's exactly what you said. Obviously, there's going to be policies, some that we may not like or may make things more challenging for us. But you really can't overstate the chaos and mayhem of the last 4 years and how distracting and time-consuming and expensive it has been. And I'm talking about really tariffs here, but even the way tax reform went through. And as we sometimes say around here, when you're dealing with this administration, it feels like the left tiny hand doesn't know what the right tiny hand is doing. And you get a different message from one agency involved in trade, say Department of Commerce, and a very different message on just basic facts from the USTR. Good people in both places. There's some great professionals in USTR throughout the whole thing. But I've been saying for a while, we don't have to talk about fair trade or free trade. We'll take predictable trade. We've been dealing with, bad public policy for a long time, going back to the Hoover tariffs and the Trump-Hoover combination for our industry is just a disaster, and to have things changing by tweet and day by day. And I travel a lot internationally. You could get on a flight in the morning and U.S. policy would have changed by the time you landed in the other country. So I think that there's just a lot of good from having people who are being thoughtful, who are communicating and trying to coordinate policy. And there's a reason trade policy has been made traditionally over the course of months, years, and decades, not over the matter of minutes.
Yeah, that's so true. And over Twitter, I mean, the amount of policy that was pushed out over Twitter over the last 4 years has been mind-boggling, to say the least. So we're looking forward, hopefully, to some more predictability. Peter, as we close out the segment, we want to bring in Jasmine Pendergrass. Jasmine, who does a world-famous What You Got, What You Getting segment. Jasmine, why don't you tell Peter how this works, and then we'll see what Peter has and what he's getting.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So Peter, we do What You Got, What You Getting, which is what you have on your feet currently and what shoes you're planning on buying in the future. You guys were stationed at a booth at the trade show that was like my favorite to go to see what I want to get next. So I'm curious about what your answers will be for What You Got, What You Getting.
Okay, good. Hopefully I won't disappoint you. Because I was going to say earlier that with the trade policy that we were seeing from the Trump people, we were all going to be barefoot in a few years because we wouldn't be able to afford shoes. So I want to be clear. I am wearing shoes today.
That sounds a little hyperbolic, but these are the times we live in. So,
all right, I made it up. So yeah, so how can I help?
So what shoes do you have on, and then what do you plan to buy next up when it comes to footwear?
So I'm wearing. We have within the Columbia brand, we have a sub brand called PFG, Performance Fishing Gear, and this stuff is worn by lots of people who, one, probably never fish. It's
like myself.
A fashion statement. Some of them probably don't even eat fish. I've got a daughter who's a vegan, and she's walking around the house in PFG gear. So I'm wearing some PFG shoes. They're doing quite well. They do particularly well it's probably the South and Southwest. But it's really kind of, and frankly, I can't tell you the style name right now, but it's really more of a sneaker. And it was a choice this morning between wearing that or a shoe called the Facet, F-A-C-E-T, which is one of our new sort of waterproof, more sneaker style hiking shoe. And I should say that I've just moved to a horse property just outside Portland. So it's been like a monsoon season around here. So waterproof is critical as I'm walking around the pasture.
Yeah, totally critical. Now, so what are you going to get next?
Probably we've actually been investing in we were talking about Sorel brand earlier. We've been investing more in the men's line there because it started out as a men's shoe, technical, cold weather, as I've said before, and then we leaned heavily into growing the more fashion forward women's program. But we don't want to leave the men's shoes behind, and we see lots of opportunities. So there's sort of just a men's chukka that I will wear there. It's sort of like a desert boot, but with Sorel's own twist on it, and just a good pair of hiking boots. As we say around here, our main goal as a company is always to connect active people with their passions. And one of the things we're selling a lot of is, as I've said at other times, is hiking shoes for people to get out, particularly during the pandemic when they want to. So we've got a hiking boot that's I won't go into pricing, but let's just say it's a good deal for a great shoe, Newton Ridge. And I know we sell those all around the globe to a surprising degree in places where you wouldn't expect people to be buying a hiking shoe. It's just a good, comfortable fit.
Awesome. So you've got it's interesting because you're talking about where you got one product that transitions to another product for the men's side and women's side. And I think that's interesting because we see a lot of that happening, like with Lululemon, which went from women to men. So Matt was wearing Lululemon before men's pants came out. I know. So he was way ahead of the game.
That's a vivid image.
They finally caught up to Matt's style because he's so fashion forward. But
exactly.
But Peter, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some insights and some ideas of the marketplace and challenges that you guys see, but huge opportunities and potentials and always being involved with FDRA and our board and being active as members and supporters. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I do want to take a minute to just thank you guys for, you guys been, steady as a rock for us in, throughout the last 4 years of these challenging trade things. But as we were looking last year, and we, like everybody else, we suddenly lost revenue. We had no way of making money for a bit of time, other than just through the digital business. And so we were cutting everything back that we could. And we looked, of course, at memberships, and we didn't have to think twice about keeping our membership and engagement with FDRA. It's that important to us. So we appreciate it.
Thank you, Peter. That means a lot. Thank you very much.
It does. Folks, this is Shoe and Show, the Footwear Industry's podcast. We want to thank you guys for listening. As always, go to shoeandshow.com for the full catalog. But as always, please be safe. Please stay healthy. Apparently, please take a hike in the best sense possible. And until next time, Shoein is out.
Shoein has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.